Thank you all for joining me. I'm your host Sam, and today we're going to be talking about the case of MARCEL HEße, also known as the 4chan killer. Today's video deals with topics like suicide, harm to children, and murder. If you feel that you are unable to handle these topics, please turn back now. Some people are born with no sensitivity toward other people's feelings. They do whatever they want with no regards to how it might affect other people. If a person does whatever they want, harms someone along the way, but lacks remorse, they're displaying sociopathic tendencies. If a person goes out of their way to harm someone and lacks remorse, these tendencies are considered psychopathic. Most of the time, people living with these tendencies live out in the real world among us, not acting on impulse. They blend into society and represent about 1% of it each. On an interesting but unrelated note, people with these tendencies gravitate toward jobs like CEOs, lawyers, police officers, and medical professionals. That doesn't mean that everyone in those jobs has those tendencies, but that a lot of people with socio and psychopathic traits often have these careers. Just something to think about. But what happens when a person with these tendencies has nothing to lose? They can wreak absolute havoc on everyone around them, as we are about to see. Marcel Hesse was a German-born teenager who loved video games and the internet like most teenagers do. As this case did take place in Germany, English translations are slim, so not much is known about Marcel's upbringing other than what I've gathered here. In March of 2017, he was 19 years old and struggling to find a purpose with his life. He lived with his sister after his parents had moved out, and had recently been rejected by the German army and was incredibly depressed. So depressed that on March 5th, he texted a friend asking what method of taking his own life would be the best. He ended up trying carbon monoxide poisoning, but it didn't work. The entire time during his attempt, Marcel was still texting his friend, but after it didn't work, Marcel decided to take things further and become a murderer. He grabbed a knife and headed over to his next-door neighbors, intending to kill whoever answered the door first. When his 9-year-old neighbor named Jaden answered, Marcel lied and said he needed help with a ladder in the basement. Jaden's parents weren't home, but Jaden knew Marcel and trusted him enough to follow. The two went down into Marcel's basement, where he proceeded to stab Jaden over 50 times with his knife. There are multiple accounts of the incident that say different amounts, but the point is that it was excessive and cruel. After Marcel finished killing his neighbor, he took a picture of himself with the body and sent it to the same friend that he was texting. He also sent a video of the aftermath to this friend saying, "I just killed the neighbor's child. Doesn't feel bad, to be honest. My hand bleeds a little, which is the only thing annoying me. I actually wanted to get a girl in here so I could sexually assault her." This friend panicked and uploaded the picture to 4chan, asking for advice in what to do with the situation. He eventually called the police, and Marcel went on the run. After Jaden's family returned home and could not find him, they searched everywhere for their son, and eventually, with the help of police, his body was discovered. A national manhunt was out for Marcel, but he didn't care. Marcel uploaded his own images of the crimes to 4chan and to the dark web, but something even more disturbing was about to happen. Marcel hid out with his friend, a man identified as 22-year-old Christopher W., who didn't know anything about his crimes. The two played video games, ate pizza, and just had a normal night before falling asleep. But by the next morning, Christopher had seen Marcel's face on the news, and he learned about his crimes. He confronted his friend, asking how he could do something as heinous as take an innocent life. The walls were closing in on Marcel, and he feared Christopher would turn him in. In his eyes, getting caught meant that the fun would be over. Marcel stabbed Christopher 68 times with the same knife, killing him. He took photos of the crime scene and uploaded them onto the dark web, and then he set Christopher's house on fire and fled the scene. Marcel uploaded a manifesto to the internet which read, "To kill someone is just a series of movements. To produce the wound, to keep the victim from defending. To give the mortal blow and wait for the victim to be dazed." There were also some Japanese words from various anime and video games that Marcel liked. In his upload, he provided a timestamp of 8 a.m. on Tuesday and claimed his victim was a woman that he had tortured until she gave him her bank information. He likely did this to throw off police, as they would be looking for a female victim rather than his friend Christopher. He'd also claimed he'd killed 5 people instead of 2, likely for the same reason, and that he wanted to seem like more of a prominent killer than he actually was. But just as quickly as Marcel's murder spree started, it would end. Not long after fleeing the scene and hiding out somewhere only he knows, he casually walked into a nearby Greek restaurant. He was carrying a black umbrella and some onions, oddly enough. He went up to staff telling them, "I'm the man they're looking for," and asked for them to call the police. Just like that, one of the biggest manhunts in Germany's history was over. Once arrested, he told police of Christopher's burning flat, and they found his body. Police said his confession was cold and very emotionless. During Marcel's 5-month trial, he never admitted guilt. He stayed silent most of the time, likely not feeling any guilt at all. His defense lawyers argued that he was not mature enough to be tried as an adult, as in Germany you can be tried as a minor up until you're 21. The court decided against this, however, and he was tried as an adult. During Marcel's trial, his sister visited him, and she later spoke to the court about what occurred during these visits. She claimed that Marcel had never looked as proud as he did when she saw him in prison. She also claimed that he had changed into a different person after discovering the internet, and he had few real friends left as a result. He spent all of his time playing video games or scrolling through 4chan or the dark web. When his sister asked him if he regretted any of his crimes, he shouted no, with no expression. He never seemed to have much excitement toward anything. Well, except for when he shouted "I am 4chan" during his sister's visit. That was the first and only time his sister ever visited him while he was in jail. Marcel was sentenced to life in prison with a conditional preventive detention. In Germany, a life sentence without a preventative detention would allow a convict to automatically be released after 15 years in prison. Because of the brutality of the murders, the public prosecutor's office wanted to ensure that Marcel would not be out anytime soon. Prison psychologists have noted his psychopathic and sociopathic tendencies, and that Marcel did not feel any empathy, and likely still won't. He probably will never feel guilt for his crimes, but he will remain in prison for the rest of his life. Thank you for watching today's video. I know it was a bit on the shorter side, but hopefully I will be getting more of these podcasts out soon in the future. If you liked my content, you can check out my TikTok. The link is in the description, and there should be a link somewhere on screen. But thank you again for watching. I appreciate everything. And until next time, goodbye.